Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Singh, and my presentation is titled Mobile Health Applications for Postpartum Depression Management, a theory-informed analysis of change use engagement criteria in the digital environment. So the agenda for this presentation is that we will have an introduction. I will state the study objective and explain our theoretical rationality and the methods in our study. Then I will explain the results and finish with a discussion and conclusion. So postpartum depression is a significant public health issue. It affects approximately 15% of postpartum women. And factors like childcare, lack of time, and stigma can be barriers to treatment of depression in women. Recently, smartphone applications have shown a lot of potential to provide accessibility and help overcome barriers to care. However, our current understanding of PPD mobile health tools is limited, particularly in regards to their ability to engage women and to facilitate positive behavioral changes. With that in mind, our study objective is to evaluate existing PPD smartphone applications and their standing along three critical dimensions: their grounding in behavioral theory, their integration of digital engagement features, and their usability through design elements. Okay, so this is an outline of our theoretical rationality. So in the Q criteria, the C stands for change, and the theory that we have selected for these criteria is the taxonomy of behavior change techniques, which was developed by Michi in 2013. Then we have U for use, and for these criteria, we have selected Nielsen's usability heuristics as our theory. And finally, the E stands for engagement. And to assess this criteria, we have selected the patient engagement framework, which was developed by the Health Information and Management System Society in 2014. Okay, now I'm going to go a bit more into each of these theories. So the taxonomy of behavior change techniques is a group of 93 individual theory-linked techniques. They support lasting and long-term positive health behaviors, and they provide a standardized vocabulary to quantify socio-behavioral and psychological constructs. Here to the right, you can see an example of two behavior change techniques, or BCTs. The first one that you see is goals and planning, and below that you see a hierarchy of techniques that are used to achieve this behavior change. The very first one is the simple goal setting for a behavior. And below that, the second technique that you see is feedback and monitoring. And again, you see a hierarchy below that. And the first one is monitoring of behavior by others without feedback. Okay, now I will go a bit into the patient engagement framework. This is a framework that has 5 cumulative patient engagement levels and 9 patient engagement categories. It starts with inform me, and it goes all the way to support my e-community. And an example of an engagement category is printable forms where the patient can record their informed consent. Okay, now we're going into usability. So Nielsen in 1994 established some guidelines that subjectively measure usability and satisfaction with a user and the experience that they have with, for example, an application. And this is important because design elements promote patient retention and satisfaction with digital health interventions for mental health, including PPD. And to the right, you can see a poster that lists all 10 of the usability heuristics. It's accessible online and freely downloadable. Okay, this is an outline of our methods. So we begin with step 1, which is app selection. Here we used an inclusion criteria that our apps had to have a focus on PPD and they had to be free, no cost. And then step 2 is theory mapping. This is where we assess the integration of the Q criteria in each app. So we have the 3 theories that I have explained: the BCTs, the patient engagement framework, and the usability heuristics. And then step 3 is the final review and analysis, where we measure the overall integration of Q criteria. And we did some additional analysis of the application's security, privacy, and interoperability. All right, so I'm going to go into step 1. So this is our app selection process. So we started searching in the Apple and Google stores and obtained initially 349 apps. And of these, we excluded most of them, 325, because they did not have a focus on postpartum depression or PPD. And of these, so we were left with 24 apps, and of these, one was deauthorized by the App Store, which left us with 23 apps that we downloaded for full feature review. And then 8 apps were further excluded after the full review and seeing that they didn't really have a focus on PPD, which left us with a final sample of 15 apps that were reviewed. Okay, now I'm going into step 2, which is our theory mapping. So 9 apps were reviewed by 1 researcher and 6 apps were reviewed by 2 researchers. And the mapping to BCTs was based on the BCT label and description. A BCT delivery was counted as affirmative if the features encourage the user to self-deliver the BCT, or if it directly delivered the BCT to the user. And additionally, the apps were evaluated using the PEF and the heuristic measures. The features were classified according to where they fell best in the PEF framework, and heuristic violations were marked according to the description of the heuristic. And final analysis was based on the total number of BCTs, engagement features, and heuristic violations. Okay, so these are examples of the applications that we reviewed. So we had a variety of applications with different functions. For example, Little Mother's Helper is meant to help women alleviate stress by providing them daily tips and things that they should know. And PPD Act is a research application that wants to find out the genetic associations for PPD, but it also offers symptom screening with the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. Okay, now we're in our results. So in our final review and analysis for the change criteria, 25 of the 93 BCTs were represented in app features. For example, post-pregnancy recovery implemented the BCT of action planning by suggesting to the user that they be proactive before the postpartum stage. There was an average of 4 BCTs per app with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 12. The most represented BCT was self-monitoring of behavior and social support. And most applications focused on screening and educational aspects of PPD. Okay. In our final review and analysis of the use criteria, we found that 11 of 15 apps had potential usability violations. Some examples of these violations are inconsistent menus and lack of cues to tap or swipe. And this graph here, figure 3, it shows the frequency of the violations for the heuristics where we did mark a violation. And as you can see, the most common one was help and documentation. So this would make it very difficult for the user to contact the developer if they have an issue or want to find out more. And also very difficult to find just help documentation. Okay. And for our final review and analysis of the engagement criteria, The highest PEF level that we found was Empower Me, level 3, and the most represented engagement categories were wellness guidance and symptom assessment. Table 1 shows a representation of the engagement categories in the apps. So for example, the app Moment Health had the features of maps and directions to the nearest healthcare services. So this falls under the engagement category of information and wayfinding. Okay, now for the security, privacy, and interoperability, the apps with the highest interoperability was Moment Health. All permissions for this app were enabled in the Google Play Store. They were able to receive data from the internet and, for example, access the phone's camera. And the app with the lowest interoperability was Post-Pregnancy Recovery. This application was only able to view network connections and a full network access. Then research-based apps are a more specialized category of apps in terms of their privacy and interoperability. They had interactive forms, and these collect and share user data, like their name and their email address, for research purposes. Oh, sorry. Okay, for our discussion, we did find an inverse correlation between the number of VCTs in the apps and the patient engagement level. And what this means is that these applications do incorporate behavior change techniques. We found that all of them had at least one, but they do not require that the user be actively engaged with the app. At least most of them did not require that. So behavior theory is present, but it's not optimized for active engagement. And our study does have limitations. 9 of the 15 apps were reviewed by a single researcher, and we did have a limited scope of the apps that we reviewed. Some we had to exclude because of membership requirements. Our searches were in a time frame bound analysis, and we only included free apps. And when reviewing our searches, we selected a threshold of only reviewing the top 100 resulting apps. Okay, in conclusion, postpartum depression is a significant public health issue, and there is a need for innovative solutions to help bridge PPD-related disparities in access to care. And we found that current market PPD apps exhibit many shortcomings, particularly in the areas of patient engagement and the incorporation of theory-based behavior change techniques. And further research is needed to specify user needs. The user needs will allow us to see what active ingredients are necessary to successfully engage postpartum women in their mental health management. Okay, so these are the references I used in my presentation. Thank you, and please contact me with any questions. Here is my email information.